If you're following along on the Bible app, you know that during the months of September and October, we are engaged in a series called Questioning Christianity. During this series, we're looking at some big, hard topics. Last week, Pastor Scott led us in looking at the sunnier side of doubt. And how doubt can actually lead us in having a stronger faith. Today we are looking at when the church is toxic, and how next week we're going to be looking at how the Bible, asking if the Bible is relevant. In the next couple of weeks we're going to be looking in a blended worship at 10:30. Our children and youth are going to ask questions about science and the existence of God. You know, how is it true with science and God existing at the same time? We're going to be looking at why does the church ignore what really matters in the world, and can a loving God really send people to hell? We're asking some tough questions, and we're gearing this sermon series toward two groups of people: those who have sincere, honest questions about faith, and we're trying to teach you how to talk to people who have deconstructed faith and who are asking honest questions about how to come back to faith. And today is one of the hardest topics I've ever preached on. I was telling somebody this is one of the hardest sermons I've ever had to prepare because this is a hard topic. You know, this is something that is stepping on toes this morning. I feel like I'm preaching to the choir because it's talking to people in the church. So this morning I want to begin by asking you a question. What makes you mad? Does anything make you mad? I know for me, a bad call in a football game makes me mad. Like, was that really a hold? Was that really a hold? Was that really a push? Was that really an offsides that put us back 5 yards? Because really, in my mind, we won the game. I mean, the way that I look at it, we outplayed Georgia and we really won the game. I know Georgia got a win, and I know technically we lost, but I think we really won. You know what I'm talking about? You know what I'm saying. That makes me mad that we kind of lost that game. What makes me mad is that people, when I'm driving down the interstate, and I'm usually in a hurry going somewhere, people in the left lane, what are they doing? They're going slow. What is the left lane designed to do? To pass people. But what are people doing? They're putting on makeup, and they're listening to music, and they're combing their hair. They're just doing whatever. They're just hanging out in the left lane. And I'm like, oh my gosh, get out of the left lane. Get in the right lane. You know, it makes me mad when people are in the left lane driving slow. Maybe people in your family make you mad. Maybe your friends make you mad when maybe they chew loudly when you're eating dinner. Is that a thing, when they chew loudly? Or maybe they look at you in a strange way when you're talking to them. Is that a thing that makes you mad? But what really makes you mad? I mean, if we're talking about what makes you mad, what really makes you mad? Lying makes me mad. Hungry children in the world makes me really mad, right? People not having the resources for housing make me really mad. people not having enough to take care of family and friends in this world makes me really mad, not having enough resources. But let me ask you a question. You ever gotten mad at the church? I have. Yeah? Anybody? Yeah? You ever gotten so mad that you've decided that you don't want to be a part of a church because you've gotten so mad at the church? One of my best friends, man, we go out to eat together at her house yesterday when Tennessee won the game. I was, enjoying the game, and we go on vacations together. We do everything together. She's left the church because she's been hurt by multiple church judgment of her and her family. And she's left because she's hurt and she's in pain because of how she's been treated. She still loves God. She still does the devotion every morning. She still prays. And she prays for me every day. And I told her I was going to talk about her in this sermon. And she goes, "You better not mention my name." I said, "I won't." She's left the church because she's hurt by the church. You know anybody that's hurt by the church? Maybe you've got a family member. Maybe you've got a friend. Or maybe it's you. That at some point in your life, you've been so hurt by the church that you've quit on the church. There's a theologian that I love from Duke Seminary that has kind of rocked my world a little bit. I follow her, and she created this video for people that has been hurt by the church. And I want us to watch a portion of it this morning.
Blessed are you, standing among the ruins of a faith that once felt so sturdy, now turned to dust under your feet. The certainty you once had, gone. The community you loved, dissipated. The hope you held dear, hard to find. Instead, what's taken up residence is the very stuff that seems to counter what you imagined a life with God to be. Disappointment, doubt, disillusionment, despair. In this new landscape, may you practice the courage to find others who make space for your questions without easy answers, who celebrate doubt when it made room for more faith, who search high and low for a defiant hope born amidst despair. Blessed are you, dear one, you who don't give up wrestling, who have eyes to see something new rebuilt on top of what was. Blessed are you.
Her last phrase right there, blessed are you who are wounded and walk away. She's talking about people who are wounded and walk away from the church. And the more I talk to people who are wounded by the church, who are wounded by what they call a toxic church, who are questioning Christianity, the more I discover is that there is no hurt like church hurt. You know what I mean? There is no hurt like church hurt. It's interesting when we look at Matthew's gospel, Matthew 23, that Jake has already read for us. Jesus is not mincing words here. And he is giving his harshest criticism in the New Testament, not toward outsiders who are unchristian or non-Christian, non-believers. He's addressing the leadership of the church, the leadership of the Sadducees and the members of the law, the teachers of the law. He's addressing the teachers of the law and the Pharisees in this passage. That's his target audience. And man, Jesus is upset. I don't know if you heard the passage, but Jesus is upset. And he's targeting the teachers of the law and the Pharisees. The Sadducees and the Pharisees were the two main groups of the teachers of the law. The Sadducees were the ones that were born into the position of chief elder or priest. You were born into it. You had to be a part of it as a biological family. And they were a more liberal understanding of the Jewish law. The Pharisees are the ones we hear more in relation to Jesus being more upset at. They're the more conservative group, and they were the ones that went to Jewish training school, went to the religious schools, and worked their way up to be the chief priests and teachers of the law. That's the Pharisees, and that's the ones we hear the most often being criticized by Jesus. But the main problem that Jesus had with both of these religious leaders has to do with a Greek word, hypocrates. It meant an actor or one that would switch roles, switch masks when they were acting. Anybody want to guess what English word we get from that? Hypocrite. Hypocrite. So Jesus was saying that he was upset with the religious leaders because they were teaching, what they were teaching was not a reflection of who they were. They were teaching what the law said to Moses, which was to remember the Sabbath. They were teaching the good thing, but what they were saying and what they were acting was that they were making people, they were saying, well, you can't take a bath on the Sabbath. You can't move your bed on the Sabbath. You can't move a chair from here to there on the Sabbath. They were making up all these rules and all these regulations that put an extra burden on people. They were just making it up to making it more difficult for people. It wasn't a part of the law of Moses. They were just making it up to make it more difficult for people. Jesus said that their teaching was not a reflection of who they were. In verse 5 of Matthew 23, Jesus said, everything that they do is for show. That they wore these long robes, not like what I'm wearing, of course. That they would wear these long robes with tassels, and they would sit at the head table, and they would draw attention to what they were wearing, and they would want to wear and be drawn to the finest names and the finest seats in the house. They wanted to be treated with the greatest respect. See, to Jesus, these men, these religious leaders were acting a part. They looked good on the outside, but inside, they were filled with bitterness and envy and pride. And Jesus had some harsh words for him. I dare you to go read verse 13 of Matthew 23 when you get home later today, and look at the 7 woes that Jesus is giving to these religious leaders. I'm not going to go into them now, but Jesus lists the 7 woes of the teachers of the law and the Pharisees, and it has to do with that they shut the door of heaven in people's faces. That they were doing the opposite of what they were called to do. And they were murderous. And Jesus called them the worst names in all the New Testament in this passage. He called them blind guides. He called them brood of vipers. He called them snakes and whitewashed tombs. But you know what the worst name was? He called them hypocrites. See, Jesus had trouble with these religious leaders because of the hypocrisy and the judgment that he found in these religious leaders of his day. But friends, I wonder if non-Christians today struggle with the same when they look at the larger church today. They struggle with the hypocrisy and the judgment that they find in the larger church. Not our church specifically, but the larger church. I picked up a book that I had read in 2007. It came out in 2007. And it was a book on targeting unchristian people. And it was a book about why they weren't Christian. It was a book called Unchristian. And the 3 greatest reasons in 2007, take this in mind. In 2007, the 3 greatest reasons why somebody wasn't a Christian was that they were hypocritical, that Christians were hypocritical, judgmental, and homophobic. This was in 2007. What do you think? Would y'all agree with that in 2007? Would y'all agree that these were the 3 greatest reasons? All right. So in 2025, what do you think the 3 greatest reasons somebody, a non-Christian, would say that they have problems with Christianity would be? You think they're the same? Absolutely the same. That Christians are hypocritical, judgmental, and homophobic. Friends, not a lot has changed in 18 years. Isn't that sad? That nothing has changed in 18 years. But looking at this list, which of these is the most critical of the ones that unchristian people would say would be the one that they would point to, that would be the one that they say, this is the drawing line for us when it comes to Christianity? Hypocritical. They say that Christians, the way that Christians are hypocritical is the one that they just can't swallow. That Christians are two-faced. That they say one thing and that they do another. And that leads Christianity to have a bad name, doesn't it? It gives us a black eye. It leads us to having this toxic culture and this toxic church. And understand, hypocrisy is all a part of our lives in some way or another. I mean, you know, I say that I'm a big Chiefs fan, but I hardly ever watch the Chiefs. That's hypocrisy. and saying, oh, I'm such a big Chiefs fan, but I never watched the Chiefs play. Hypocrisy is part of our lives, whether we want to agree or not. But the problem that we have is that we have created a false image of the church. And I'm not just talking about our church at Central. I'm talking about the church at large. Because we've set the church up on a pedestal that is supposed to be perfect. The problem is the church is made up of what? The church is made up of imperfect people. We're a broken world full of broken people. As one of my seminary professors said, Christians are just hungry people telling other hungry people where we can find bread, right? That's what we are. We're hungry people telling other hungry people where we can find the bread of life. That's all we are. But sometimes we set ourselves up to be greater than that. And that's the problem. Because the message that people who are unchurched are getting is that we're a religion of rules and regulations that they have to follow. You have to look like this, you have to believe like this, you have to do this, or you can't do that. One of the things I didn't tell in the first service, don't tell them that I'm telling you. There's two models of discipleship that we can look at. And the first model is what I just said, is that you have to believe a certain way, you have to do a certain thing, you have to follow a certain set of beliefs, and then God is going to love you. Like you come into a church and you have to believe everything this church believes, and then you can join the church, right? That's one method of discipleship. A method of discipleship that I'm writing my doctoral program on, that I believe in to a greater extent, is receiving people as they are, accepting their questions, accepting their doubts, loving them first, and then allowing them to experience God when they're ready. And not making them believe something first. This is the believe first model. This is the accept first model. And I believe Jesus was the accept first model. Maybe y'all are ready to fire me. I don't know. So if you're here today, and you're a person that's been hurt by the church, my message to you is to seek God's healing. And I'm praying you will give us another chance. A chance to prove to you that we are a church that's going to love you, that's going to care for you, that will be the church that God wants for you. If you're already in this church, most of us are. As my grandmother says, remember where you came from. Remember we're all sinners, that we need to fall upon the grace of God. We're all sinners in need of God's grace. And for Jesus, the true measure of faith It's found not in the words and the doctrines that we accept in the religious actions, but rather the orientation of the heart. Is our heart turned toward God? This has been a hard sermon for me, guys, because there's pain in the church today. People have been hurt by the church, people that I know, people that I love. But you know what? There's also beauty. Check this picture out right here. 11 people plus me and Scott on the shores of the lake last Sunday. 11 people who stood there and said that they wanted to be baptized or remember their baptism. But most of all, they were confirming that they wanted to be a part of Central United Methodist. I wish you could have heard the stories that were in these people's lives. Some of them shared their stories. Some of them have shared it with me and with Scott. Friends, there's some powerful stories in this group right here. Some powerful stories of what God has done in people's lives. There's some people in this picture who have been hurt by the church and have found love in this church, who have found acceptance by you. And I'm grateful that they have been loved by you and have found a place here. So don't stop praying. Don't stop loving. Because loving one another is our job, right? I'm not the judge. I'm going to say that you're not the judge. Only God is the judge. Only God is the one who gets to set the rules. And may we remember that God is a God of love. And God is the one who loves us all. Thanks be to God. Would you pray with me? God, thank you for your love that always surrounds us. Thank you for the way that you offer forgiveness when we fail you, and restoration when we walk away. Thank you for the way that you always redeem us from failure and always walk with us when we are in need. God, as a church, help us to be able to love those who are hurt by the church, to receive those who are wounded by the church, and most of all, to be able to love one another as you have called us to love. For it's in the name of Christ that we pray. Amen.